What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I want to talk about the most expensive keys in Keyforge. Now look, the whole point of Keyforge is forging keys. The clue is in the name, right? And the general rule is that in order to forge a key, you must have 6 amber at the start of your turn. At the start of your turn, if you've got 6 amber, you have to forge a key. It's a have to, by the way, you don't get a choice. Now, there are ways that you can forge keys out of turn. So, something like a key charge, for instance. You lose an amber, and then you forge a key at current cost. That's a phrase we're going to come back to in a minute. So you lose an amber, and then you pay 6. So as long as you've got 7 amber, you can forge a key right now. Now, for newer players that might be watching, the reason for this is very simple. Let's say you've got 20 amber. I'm going to forge a key next turn. Your opponent drops a too much to protect. They steal all but 6, i.e. they get 14 of your amber. Then they drop an urchin to steal 1 more. All of a sudden, you no longer have 20 amber, you have 5. Your opponent, ironically, has taken 15 of your amber. I don't know if that's irony, but it's certainly harsh. And then you're not forging a key. Key charge lets you go, no, I'm doing it now. I'm just doing it now. And similarly, there are ways to actually forge keys without spending any amber whatsoever. So one that I have, I mean, it's not good, but one that I love is Redacted. Redacted is the one whereby it's an artifact, and when you choose logos as your active house, you place an amber from the common pool on it, and when there are 4 or more on it, you forge a key at no cost and sacrifice it. Or it's the other way around. You know what I mean? That's pretty cool, right? We like this. Well, we need to go back to the wording on key charge of at current cost. Because you see, keys cost 6, but we can change this. And we might as well have a look at Mermooks. So if we have a look at regular Mermook, this is a Mermook that came around right back in Call of the Archons. Mermook comes along and says, right, your opponent's keys cost +1, not yours, just your opponent's. So now, your opponent cannot forge a key for 6 amber, they've got to forge a key at 7 amber, for instance. Cool. Now, Mustic Mermook came along in, the most recent set, in Worlds Collide, and that says that each player's keys cost +1 amber. You pay 1 more, but your opponent also pays 1 more. So your keys cost 7, and your opponent's keys cost 7. And actually that wasn't the only Mermook we got in Worlds Collide, weirdly. We also got ourselves imprinted Mermook that says your keys cost -1 amber. So I don't know if there is a maximum of how many Mermook you can have per deck, etc. But if you could, for instance, get 3 Mermook out, the imprinted kind, you would be paying 3 to forge a key. And for a long time, well, since its inception, I mean, back in Call of the Archons, Lash of Broken Dreams was a card we saw a lot. Just increases keys by 3, the cost of them, during your opponent's next turn. And the point I'm making here is that although 6 is the baseline cost for forging a key, there are plenty of ways to change that around. Which, of course, leads to the fairly obvious question, alright, but what is the maximum number of amber you can pay to forge a key? Now, that might be something to try later, trying to actually figure out the largest possible cost of forging a key. But I can tell you there was a game played on the Crucible recently where keys cost, I kid you not, 116 amber. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. 116 amber. Now, to put that into context, that is 19 1/3 times as much as they should cost. It's almost 20 times. 120 would be exactly 20. It's almost 20 times what keys should actually cost. 116 amber. How did they do that? Well, it's our new friend Eddie, isn't it? You see, Eddie, or EDAI Eddie 4x4, is a card we talked about in a few videos lately. It is one of the most impactful cards that came around in Worlds Collide. Eddie When you play it, you archive a card. It's a free power 0 armor creature, but far more importantly, your opponent's keys cost +1 amber for each card in your archives. Oh. So if you can get, say, 10 cards in your archive, then all of a sudden your opponent's keys cost +10 amber. And +10 amber's a lot, right? But it's still not actually 116. Like, 116 is still a huge amount more than 10. Well, you see, the deck in question is Caruso Chef de U-Boots. And you see, if we have a look, there are 5 Eddies in this deck. Yep, there are 5 Eddies in this deck. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is why it's so gosh darned expensive. Because actually, if you can archive a whole bunch of cards, each archived card then increases the cost of your opponent forging by 5 when you've got Eddie on the field, or when you've got 5 Eddie on the field, I should say. If you've got, say, 10 cards in your archive, 1 Eddie means they've got to pay 10 more. But 2 Eddie means they've got to pay 20 more. 3 Eddie means they've got to pay 30 more. 4 Eddie means they've got to pay 40 more. 5 Eddie means they've got to pay 50 more. Well, now imagine that you can archive 20 cards. Well, if you can archive 20 cards, then all of a sudden your opponent isn't paying 50 more to forge. They're paying 100 more to forge. Now, if we take 116 amber, we take away the 6 that it would usually cost, because it generally costs 6. We've increased it by 110, divided by 5 eddies, and that means we have got 22 archived cards. 22 archived cards means that each eddy is increasing the cost of forging by 22. 5 eddies means that you are increasing the cost of forging by 110. Forging would usually cost 6, and that means that you've got to pay 116 amber in order to forge a key. And let's be 100% clear about this. I don't care how good an Amber Rush deck you have. I don't care how many Full Moon and Hunting Witch and Dust Pixie you've got. Because the fact of the matter is, you aren't getting 116 amber 3 times. Just to be clear, right? That means that you would, in order to forge 3 keys, have to pay 348 amber. Now, let's be clear, I'm being a little bit flippant here, because actually that is assuming that your opponent, before you forged a single key, is able to get all 5 eddy and 22 archived cards. It's not that likely, ladies and gentlemen. It's not going to happen all that often. Now, the other thing to bear in mind here, we play with 36 card decks. That means that if you've archived 22 cards, and you've got 5 eddy already on the field, then the absolute maximum number of cards in your deck is 9. 22 in the archive, 5 eddy on the board is 27, taken from 36 is 9. Which means that if there are 0 cards in your discard pile, and 0 cards on the field other than eddy, you will basically draw your entire deck twice every 3 turns. So if your opponent KOs Eddie, it is going to come back very, very quickly. And the thing to remember about Eddie is it is a permanent skill. It's not like Lash of Broken Dreams where you've got to use it. The second Eddie hits the field, it's on. Now, there is an answer to this. The answer is Dicenia. And if your opponent drops a Dicenia, you lose. Because Dicenia is about the perfect counter. What it does, when you play it, your opponent discards each of their archive cards, you gain 1 amber for each card discarded this way, so all of a sudden your keys cost 0 extra, you gain 22 amber. It's not a viable strategy. So this deck would get destroyed by anything that could find their Dicenia, but outside of that, you're doing alright. Also, when you discard their entire archive, they've then got a giant discard pile, so the chance of them drawing into multiple Eddie is slim, and even if they do draw into multiple Eddie, they're unlikely to be able to archive that many cards too fast. So yes, it's an utterly broken combo, and yes, it's phenomenal, and yes, when it works, you guarantee to win. And to be fair, this is a 76 SAS deck. It is in the kind of top 2%, top 1% of decks SAS-wise. But it's not going to win every game. Though just to be clear, do not be surprised if this deck ends up winning Vault Tours, etc. in the future. It is an over-the-top phenomenal deck. Now, the weird thing is, this deck doesn't even have a lot of archiving. The only archiving we've got is Eddie and Tortor Vapors, whereby you draw 2 cards and archive a card. But the entire point here is that you just want to play Eddie. I mean, genuinely, right, that the point of this deck, really, is get 5 Eddie down. Get every other card in your archive, with maybe the exception of Tortor Vapors. Because Tortor Vapors lets you draw 2 cards. So if we run the numbers, I gave you the example. If you've got 5 Eddie on the board and 22 cards in your archive, you have 9 cards in your deck. You're basically drawing 6 per turn, assuming an empty hand, and then this will then let you draw another 2, so you're all but drawing your entire deck every turn. So essentially, you need your Eddie to keep being destroyed so that you can replay them and re-archive a bunch of cards, as weird as that might sound. Now, what is also really cool, this deck does have Zenzi, and Daughter for some really nice draw power, and also Igor is pretty gosh darn nice for a bit of consistency. We're not going to go into a huge amount of detail about the deck, because a lot of the time what you're really trying to do here is build up a giant archive, so it doesn't really matter what other cards you've got, you're archiving them. But I do need to just point out here that there are 3 copies of Exhume. Gives you an Aember bonus and lets you choose a creature in your discard pile and play it as if it belonged to the active house and was in your hand. Which means not only do you have 5 copies of Eddie, but over in Dis you've got 3 copies of Exhume, which can be used to get your Eddie out of the discard and just play them right away. It probably is possible to have keys costing more than 116 Aember, but I haven't seen it yet, and as far as I am concerned, this is the record. Though if anybody wants to pop down an actual or even a hypothetical deck in the comment section, I would genuinely be delighted to see it and talk it through with you. It sounds like fun. But you want to know how much keys can cost? 116 Aember. That's how much. Also, as a quick side note, this deck is a brilliant one for basically looking at it and going, yeah, the way you analyze decks might be wrong. Because you see, there are 2 ways to play this deck. There is the regular way, and then there is the I only care about archiving. I am literally trying to get my deck down to, well, ideally 29 cards in the archive and 5 Eddie on the board. And then all I'm going to do is reap with Eddie to win. I love this deck. I will never be able to afford this deck, but I still love it. It's amazing. Right, I've talked enough about this deck. I want to know what you think about this deck, and if you've got any ideas for how to make keys even more expensive. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk Keyforge and a whole bunch of other games. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can, well, support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, all kinds of fun stuff. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would you? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.